An alien court convicts a human man, but an alien woman imprisons him in her home instead of prison. Zalter woke to a soft, golden light washing over the room. The walls shifted gently, flowing like liquid as though the home itself had moved while he slept. The platform he had lain on pulsed lightly, almost like a heartbeat, a subtle reminder that he was never truly alone. He sat up and stretched, marveling again at how alive everything seemed. The plants that had greeted him earlier waved in tiny arcs, their colors shifting from deep green to pale yellow as if greeting him anew. He felt a strange mix of comfort and disorientation, like waking in a dream he could touch. When he stepped out of his room, he found Lyria already present, her teal skin glowing faintly in the morning light. She was arranging objects along a long, curved table, small crystalline spheres, translucent cubes, and elongated, ribbon-like shapes that shimmered faintly. Her movements were deliberate, almost like a dance, yet precise in ways he could not anticipate. "Good morning," Zalter said cautiously. He was still unsure what the appropriate way to greet her was. He had tried waving, nodding, even a small bow. Nothing seemed correct, yet she had never corrected him. "Good morning, human," Lyria replied. Her voice was soft, calm, yet held an underlying note of amusement. "You slept well?" "I think so," Zalter admitted. If sleeping on something alive counts as sleeping. He tried to keep his humor light. He could see that she appreciated subtlety more than exaggerated gestures. "The platform, it's alive, right?" She nodded. "It is part of the home. It responds to presence and adapts to comfort." "Most humans would find it unsettling." Zalter laughed softly. "Most humans also wear socks in sandals. Comfort is subjective, I guess." She tilted her head, and for a moment he felt as if her gaze reached not only his eyes but his thoughts. "Perhaps. But humans' ideas of comfort are often inefficient, yet I find it intriguing." He paused, realizing that she was observing him not as a guest or a prisoner, but as an experiment of sorts, and that thought gave him a strange thrill. Humans had survived, adapted, and thrived by being unpredictable. Perhaps that would be his strength here. Breakfast, if it could be called that, was an unusual experience. A shallow pool of liquid shimmered in front of him, reflecting colors he did not know names for. He reached in with his fingers and found it warm, lightly sweet, and nourishing. It did not taste like anything on earth, yet it was satisfying. Lyria watched quietly as he experimented with the textures, the shapes, and the temperature, her eyes following every motion. "You may eat in any manner you wish," she said finally. "It is important that I understand your natural tendencies." Zalter grinned. "Natural tendencies? I think my natural tendency is to make a mess. Humans are experts at that." She raised an eyebrow, though the expression was subtler than anything human. "Perhaps, or perhaps you adapt. You will demonstrate soon enough." After breakfast, Lyria led him to the main chamber of the home. It was enormous, larger than any building he had ever entered. The walls curved in impossible shapes, folding over themselves, creating spaces within spaces. Strange lights shimmered along the surfaces, sometimes responding to movement, sometimes to sound. In one corner, a small grove of plants hummed softly as he approached, their leaves vibrating like strings on an instrument. "This is the heart of the home," Lyria explained. "It exists to observe, respond, and grow. You will spend time here each day. Your interactions are not merely allowed, they are expected." Zalter's brow furrowed. "My interactions are expected. That sounds like a job. Do I get paid?" She did not smile, yet there was a subtle shift in her posture that suggested amusement. "You are not here for compensation. You are here to exist, to be observed, and perhaps to teach me something I cannot learn alone." He paused. "Teach you? What could I possibly teach you?" Her eyes glimmered. "Humans are unpredictable. They solve problems that my species cannot even recognize. You may think yourself ordinary, but your presence alone may alter my understanding of life itself." Zalter swallowed. That was intimidating. He had never thought of himself as extraordinary. Most humans didn't. Yet she was treating him as if he had some hidden value beyond his crimes, or perhaps because of them. The first exercises were simple, almost childlike. She placed a series of translucent cubes on a table and instructed him to stack them in what he thought was the correct order. There was no visible pattern, no instructions, only intuition. Zalter frowned, trying to think logically. Each time he placed a cube incorrectly, the stack would wobble and fall, the cubes reshaping themselves into new forms afterward. "This is strange," he admitted, laughing nervously. Are you trying to break me or just confuse me? Neither, she said calmly. I am observing. Your methods, errors, and adaptations are the point. Efficiency is irrelevant. Creativity is what matters. He realized that she was teaching him and learning from him at the same time, and as frustrating as it was, he felt a spark of excitement. Humans thrived on challenges, on problems that demanded creativity rather than brute strength. He smiled. Perhaps he could do this. The day passed slowly but not dull. Zoltar explored the home, discovering strange corridors that seemed to loop back on themselves, small gardens of glowing flora, and pools of liquid that reflected not just light but thought. Sometimes he would sit by a pool, tossing a small stone or crystal in and watching ripples distort the colors. Lyria observed silently, occasionally commenting on his technique. You approach obstacles differently than my species, she noted. You do not always seek the shortest path. You experiment, take risks, and adjust. Zoltar shrugged. That's what humans do. We make mistakes, then figure out how to fix them, usually after setting something on fire. Lyria did not respond immediately, but later, when they were alone, she asked, And are your mistakes always destructive? He paused, thinking. Not always. Sometimes they're informative or entertaining. Depends on who's watching. She did not laugh, but her eyes softened. He began to sense that she valued not just his actions, but his perspective, his human perspective. As evening approached, he felt a mixture of fatigue and exhilaration. He had been learning more about this alien home and about Lyria than he had expected in weeks. And he realized something else. He had begun to enjoy himself. Not because he was free, but because he was allowed to exist in a world where curiosity mattered more than conformity. Lyria brought him a small meal again, this time in the form of thin, iridescent sheets that dissolved on the tongue, releasing flavors that changed as he chewed. He laughed aloud, experiencing tastes that were impossible to describe with human words. You seem surprised, she observed. I am, he admitted. All of this, it's amazing and confusing and probably illegal in half the galaxies. She inclined her head, her expression unreadable. I assure you the Council would call it unusual. But you find it remarkable, and that is why I brought you here. He paused. Wait, you brought me here to live with you? Yes, she said simply. You are under my care, my choice, and perhaps my curiosity. He laughed softly, shaking his head. You're really taking a risk, you know. Housing a human like me, I'm unpredictable. And that is precisely why I chose you, she replied. You may teach me more than I could ever learn from my own species. The days that followed settled into a rhythm. Zoltar learned the patterns of the home, discovering spaces he had never seen, plants that responded to his laughter, pools that reflected his moods, and objects that moved as if alive. He experimented, played, and failed, all while Lyria watched, sometimes offering guidance, sometimes simply observing. Through it all, he discovered that the home was more than a structure. It was a living being, responsive, attentive, and endlessly curious. And through his interactions, he realized that he, too, was alive in ways he had never considered. He began to understand a truth that humans often ignored. Survival was not always about strength, speed, or cunning. Sometimes it was about presence, curiosity, and adaptability. Humans had thrived for millennia not because they were the strongest or the fastest, but because they could think, feel, and adapt in ways no other species could. And in this alien home, under the quiet observation of Lyria, he found proof of it. By the end of the second week, Zoltar had grown accustomed to his new life. He still missed Earth, the smells of rain on soil, the taste of coffee, the sound of laughter, but he had begun to see himself in a new light. He was more than a convict. He was a human. And humans, he realized with growing pride, were capable of remarkable things, even in the strangest circumstances. One evening, as the home glowed softly around them, Lyria approached him. You are different than I expected, she said, her voice carrying warmth he had not anticipated. I thought a human would be chaotic, selfish, simple. Instead, you are adaptive, curious, resilient, perhaps more than any of my species. Zoltar smiled, feeling a warmth that had nothing to do with the ambient light. That's nice of you to say. I think humans surprise even themselves sometimes. She nodded slowly. And sometimes the universe is wiser than I am to place them in my care. For the first time, Zoltar felt not like a prisoner, not like a subject, but like something new, an ambassador of his species in a world that did not yet understand humans. And in that realization, he found something even more powerful than freedom: purpose. The days in Lyria's home had grown quieter, yet richer in ways Zoltar could hardly have imagined when he first stepped inside. He woke each morning not to the usual blare of alarms or the hum of human cities, but to a gentle pulse of light and sound that seemed almost alive. The walls shifted subtly as he moved through the corridors, sometimes opening new spaces he had not noticed before, other times narrowing, guiding him gently toward a new chamber or a quiet garden of glowing plants. It was as if the house itself was learning from him, responding not with judgment but with curiosity. Zoltar had begun to explore more boldly. He had discovered a chamber filled with small, floating spheres, each emitting faint tones when touched. At first, he had hesitated, unsure whether interacting with them would be acceptable. But the curiosity that had carried humans to the moon and beyond pushed him forward. His fingers brushed a sphere, and the sound that followed was a delicate chord unlike anything he had heard before. The spheres moved in response, circling him, changing colors, harmonizing as if inviting him to play. Lyria watched from a distance, as always. She never interrupted him. She seemed fascinated, yet she maintained the quiet authority of someone who knew that this was his space to explore. "You are learning the language of the home," she said softly, her voice carrying a note of approval. Zoltar laughed. "If this is a language, it's very musical and very picky. I think it likes me, sometimes. Other times it's just teasing me." She tilted her head. "It is responding to your presence. It adapts to your choices, your moods, your creativity. You may teach it more than you know." He looked around, considering her words. The home was changing, growing almost imperceptibly with each interaction. The walls had started to develop tiny patterns that resembled constellations. The plants shifted their blooms in response to the sounds he created. Even the pools of liquid reflected not just light, but patterns that seemed to mirror his emotions. He realized that his presence had meaning here, not just to Lyria, but to the home itself. Days blurred into one another, but Zoltar noticed subtle changes in Lyria as well. She had always been calm, composed, and precise, but now she laughed quietly at his experiments, adjusted the positions of objects to better accommodate his curiosity, and sometimes asked questions that seemed designed less to gather information and more to understand. "Why do humans value failure?" she asked one afternoon as they sat by a pool that shimmered with colors that shifted according to their moods. "Why do you learn from mistakes instead of avoiding them entirely?" Zoltar shrugged, skipping a stone across the pool's surface. "Because failure teaches things success never could. Humans survive by adapting. If we never make mistakes, we never learn anything new." She considered this silently, the light of the pool reflecting in her large, expressive eyes. "Adaptation, yes. That is why your species is remarkable, and perhaps why I find your presence so enlightening." For the first time, Zoltar realized that this home, this alien woman, and even the unusual circumstances of his imprisonment were shaping him in ways he could not have predicted. He felt a quiet pride welling inside, a human pride, the kind that had carried his species across oceans, deserts, and stars. Here, in a world alien in every sense, his very human nature mattered. One day, he discovered a part of the home he had never seen before, a garden of crystalline flowers. Their petals reflected light in every color of the spectrum, and each bloom seemed to hum faintly when touched. He wandered among them, marveling at the shapes, the sounds, and the delicate fragrance that was almost alive in itself. "Be careful," Lyria said from the doorway. "They respond to thought and intention. Your emotions influence them as much as your hands." Zoltar smiled. "Good. That makes it more interesting." He reached out, brushing a petal with a fingertip. The flower quivered, releasing a soft tone that echoed gently through the room. He laughed, delighted by the reaction. "Hey, I'm making music now. Who knew flowers could sing?" She observed silently, but there was a subtle shift in her posture, an acknowledgement that he was not only exploring but contributing. The home was responding to him, yes, but so was she. Over the following days, Zoltar began experimenting more boldly. He discovered that certain actions, touching the right spheres in sequence, moving the plants in specific patterns, created responses that were far more complex than he had anticipated. The home, Lyria, and even he himself seemed to enter a quiet dialogue, an exchange of ideas and creativity without words. One evening, as the light dimmed to a soft amber glow, he found himself laughing at a small mishap. A cluster of spheres had moved too quickly in response to his actions, colliding gently and creating a burst of musical tones that made him stumble back, almost tripping over his own feet. "You find joy in unpredictability," Lyria said quietly, her eyes reflecting the soft glow of the spheres. "Most of my species would see only error. You find beauty." Zoltar shrugged. "Humans do that a lot. We see patterns where others see chaos. We laugh at mistakes. And sometimes we learn things we didn't even know we needed to learn." She studied him carefully, and he realized she was no longer just observing. She was learning from him. He, a single human, had begun to influence an alien mind in ways that seemed subtle but profound. It was during one of these evenings that Zoltar discovered a new aspect of the home. A hidden chamber revealed itself when he accidentally pressed a sequence of floating shapes in a pattern that made no sense to him at first. The door opened silently, revealing a room filled with holographic projections of worlds, galaxies, and strange creatures moving in graceful patterns. The home was showing him visions of the universe, not as a map, but as a living story. "This is incredible," he whispered. "It's like seeing the universe alive." "It is," Lyria said softly, appearing beside him. "And now it is part of your experience. You influence it by your presence, by your choices. The home adapts to you, and you in turn shape it." Zoltar felt a rush of wonder and humility. For the first time in his life, he realized that being human was not just about survival or problem-solving or even creativity in isolation. It was about connection, the ability to influence, to inspire, and to grow alongside others. And here in this alien home, he was discovering the extent of that power. The following morning, Zoltar awoke to find Lyria waiting with a small device that pulsed softly with light. "Today, we experiment," she said. "You may choose a project. Something you think would improve the home." Zoltar paused, thinking, improve the home? He had no idea where to begin. Then he noticed the spheres, the plants, the pools, and the holographic projections. A thought struck him. What if he could create a pattern that linked all of them? A chain reaction of sound, light, and motion that reflected a single human idea. He spent hours experimenting, moving spheres, touching flowers, adjusting pools, and shifting projections. The home responded in ways that were both predictable and surprising, forming harmonies and patterns he could not have imagined. Lyria observed silently, occasionally nodding or tilting her head in curiosity. When he finally stepped back, exhausted and exhilarated, the room glowed with a subtle harmony of light, sound, and movement. Lyria studied it, her expression unreadable. Then slowly she smiled, a rare, quiet smile that reached her eyes. "You have changed the home," she said. "Not merely by action, but by thought. Your presence has enriched it." Zoltar felt a warm pride swelling in his chest. He had not merely adapted to this alien environment. He had contributed. He had influenced something vast, complex, and beautiful. And in doing so, he had demonstrated the power of human curiosity, creativity, and resilience. Over the next few days, Zoltar noticed subtle changes in Lyria herself. She laughed more, experimented more, and seemed less rigid in her thoughts. She asked questions that went beyond observation, seeking insight, and often smiled at unexpected solutions he offered. He realized that he had not only adapted to her home, but had begun to influence her thinking as well. One evening, as they sat by a glowing pool, he asked quietly, "Do you ever wish humans were more like your species, more predictable, more controlled?" She considered his question for a long moment. "No," she replied finally. "Humans are unpredictable, yes, but that unpredictability is powerful. It forces thought, it sparks creativity, it challenges assumptions. You, human, are a reminder that life is not meant to be confined by rules alone." Zoltar smiled, feeling a quiet triumph. Here in an alien home, under the watchful eyes of someone who had once seemed distant and unknowable, he had found not only purpose but influence. He had begun to change the world around him, not through force, but through curiosity, creativity, and simply being human. And for the first time, he understood the subtle truth that Lyria had sensed all along. Humans were remarkable not because they conquered, or controlled, or dominated, but because they could think, adapt, and inspire in ways no other species could. That night, as he lay on the living platform, the walls shifting gently with color and light, Zoltar felt a quiet, unshakable confidence. He was human, and humans thrived not because they were predictable, but because they were endlessly, wonderfully, astonishingly unpredictable. In the heart of an alien home, Under the calm observation of Lyria, he had found something far more valuable than freedom. He had found purpose. Zoltar woke to a gentle hum vibrating through the home, a sound that seemed to come from every wall, floor, and ceiling simultaneously. He stretched and sat up, noticing that the colors of the walls were brighter than usual, shimmering with new patterns that he didn't recognize. Something had changed overnight. It wasn't just the home. Something about the energy in the air felt alive in a different way. He wandered toward the main chamber and found Lyria waiting, standing perfectly still, her teal skin almost glowing under the soft light. She had an expression he hadn't seen before, concern. "Something has happened," she said quietly. "The council has noticed." Zoltar frowned. "Noticed what, us, me, the home?" "All of it," Lyria replied. "Your influence is spreading. The data they are observing shows changes in patterns, behavior, and thought that they did not anticipate. The council, they are uncertain, curious, yes, but also wary." He swallowed hard. The Intergalactic Council was a vast and cautious body, responsible for governing thousands of worlds. Humans had rarely caught their attention, and certainly never like this. "So, what does that mean for me?" he asked cautiously. "It means they may demand a formal evaluation," Lyria said. "They may want to remove you from my care and place you in a standard correctional facility. They may want to study you differently under stricter conditions. I cannot prevent it, but I can prepare you." Zoltar's heart pounded. After all the days he had spent adapting, learning, and even enjoying life in the home, the thought of losing this connection, this freedom, was frightening. But beneath the fear, a spark of determination lit within him. Humans were adaptable. Humans were clever, and humans could influence situations no one expected. Lyria guided him through exercises that day, preparing him for potential observation. She showed him new chambers, spaces designed to demonstrate his abilities, creativity, and adaptability. "The Council values efficiency, precision, and measurable outcomes," she explained. "You must show them that your presence is more than random behavior. You must show them the human approach." "What's the human approach?" Zoltar asked, curious despite the tension. "Problem-solving through creativity, connection, and adaptation," Lyria replied. "You are not a machine. You cannot be reduced to numbers or statistics, but that is your strength. Use it." He nodded, feeling both pressure and excitement. He had survived worse situations than fear of an alien council, after all. Humans had thrived on challenges for centuries, often against overwhelming odds. Later that day, the council arrived. They did not come in ships nor with armies. Their presence was projected through holographic interfaces, vast and intricate, floating in midair around the main chamber. A dozen figures appeared, each representing a different species, all watching, all calculating. Their voices combined into a chorus that was both mechanical and organic, addressing him as a single unit. "Human Zoltar," the lead projection said, "your actions under the care of Citizen Lyria Vess have been observed. Your influence on this environment is unprecedented. You have altered patterns of behavior, energy flow, and learning in ways that challenge established norms. Explain yourself." Zoltar took a deep breath. He had spent weeks here, learning and experimenting. Now was the moment to show them what humans could do, not with force, but with thought, creativity, and presence. "I didn't break anything," he said carefully, a small smile tugging at his lips. "I adapted, I explored, I experimented. I made mistakes, sure, but I also learned and contributed. That's what humans do. We don't just follow rules, we think, we create, we inspire. And apparently we can change a home and a mind without even trying." There was a pause, almost imperceptible, as the council processed his words. One projection tilted slightly, a gesture of interest. Another seemed to flicker as though its circuits were struggling to comprehend. Lyria stepped forward. "They are listening not to punish, but to understand. Your species is not easily measured. Zoltar's actions have created data that challenges our assumptions. This is not a trial. This is a revelation." Zoltar blinked. "A revelation, me?" "Yes," she said. "Your presence has caused reflection, adaptation, growth. You have demonstrated that humans are different, not defective. That difference is a strength." The council's projections swirled, lights dancing like waves in the air. "Human Zoltar," the lead projection said again, "you have been under observation as part of a voluntary arrangement. The data shows improvement in the environment, in the caregiver, and in the patterns of energy within the home." Your species exhibits qualities that may enhance interstellar cooperation if applied correctly. Zolter's mouth went dry. He hadn't expected compliments from a galaxy-wide council, but he straightened his back. Humans thrived under challenge, under scrutiny, under pressure. And now he realized he was being given the ultimate opportunity to represent his species. I don't fully understand, he admitted honestly. I just did what felt natural. I explored, I learned, I tried to make sense of things. If that helps, if that matters, then maybe humans can do more than you expect. There was silence for a moment. Then the lead projection's light pulsed softly. This is remarkable. You have acted without coercion, without fear, yet you have achieved results far beyond our projections. You demonstrate creativity, resilience, and adaptability, the very qualities your species possesses in abundance. We must reconsider our regulations regarding humans. They are not merely participants in galactic systems, they are catalysts. Zolter's chest swelled with a quiet pride. Humans had always underestimated themselves, but here, under the scrutiny of countless alien species, he was being recognized not for strength or domination, but for intelligence, adaptability, and perspective. The council continued, their voices intertwining in a complex harmony. Citizen Lyria Vess, you have demonstrated courage and insight in assuming responsibility for this human. Your actions provide a model for interspecies engagement. Your methods, while unorthodox, have produced results that suggest collaboration, trust, and observation may be more valuable than rigid enforcement. Lyria inclined her head, her expression calm yet proud. The human adapts, humans contribute. Observation alone does not teach, they must engage. That is what I have learned. The council seemed to consider this. Human Zolter, the lead projection continued, you will remain under observation, but the parameters of your confinement are hereby modified. You will retain your presence in the home, and your interactions with Citizen Vess will continue. However, you are now acknowledged as an agent of insight and education, not merely a subject of study. Zolter's heart pounded with excitement and disbelief. This was unprecedented. He had been facing possible confinement, scrutiny, and alien judgment, and now he was being recognized, elevated, and entrusted with a role far beyond anything he had imagined. He glanced at Lyria. Her calm gaze held approval and pride. He realized that their partnership, forged from curiosity, respect, and human unpredictability, had shifted the course of his fate, and perhaps even the Council's perspective on humanity. Thank you, he said softly, feeling the weight of the moment. I'll do my best. You already have, Lyria replied. Humans succeed not by following rules alone, but by thinking, creating, and connecting. You have reminded me of that. Over the next several days, Zolter continued to explore, experiment, and influence the home, but now with a new awareness. The Council's recognition added a layer of responsibility, yet it did not diminish his curiosity or joy. He discovered new chambers, new pools, and new interactions, pushing the boundaries of what he and the home could achieve together. Sometimes the Council would observe remotely, their projections floating silently above, recording, analyzing, but never interfering. Zolter noticed subtle changes in their behavior. They asked questions, requested demonstrations, and even suggested experiments, sometimes carefully, sometimes indirectly. He realized that humans were no longer the subjects of study. They were collaborators, teachers, and innovators. Lyria continued to guide him, but their relationship had evolved. She laughed more easily, experimented more boldly, and engaged with him as a partner in discovery. Zolter, in turn, realized that he had not only adapted to this alien environment, but had begun to shape it, and her thinking, in ways that would have been impossible if he had followed rules blindly. One evening, as the home glowed with soft, flowing light and the spheres sang their gentle tones, Zolter reflected on the transformation. He had come here as a human accused of a minor crime, expecting confinement and isolation. Instead, he had discovered purpose, influence, and recognition on a scale he could never have imagined. And he understood more clearly than ever that human strength was not measured by force or fear, but by curiosity, adaptability, and the willingness to engage, learn, and inspire. In the vastness of the galaxy, amidst alien species and unknown laws, humans had a place, not as conquerors, but as catalysts, capable of changing minds, environments, and even entire civilizations simply by being themselves. That night, as he lay on the living platform, the home pulsing softly around him, Zalter felt a deep, unshakable pride. He was human. And humans, he realized, had always thrived not by being predictable, but by being extraordinary in ways that no one, not even the council, could fully measure or contain.